RomikaDesigns.com or simply email us with your ideas. We specialize in custom design and would be honored to have the opportunity to discuss it with you. Call us at 817-400-4040, email info@romikadesigns.com, or visit us on the web at romikadesigns.com.
Hey travelers, do you want to save money on your next flight? Then pick up the phone and call. That's right, call, because the best prices are not online. They're with SmartFares. See, SmartFares has special deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them. So you get airline tickets at ridiculously low prices. Our prices are too low to publish online. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip or treat yourself to dinner or shopping. So stop searching all of those travel sites to find the lowest price on your next flight. Let one of our SmartFares expert travel agents find ridiculously low prices for you. Call SmartFares today and get the best price on your next flight. Guaranteed. Also, save up to 50% off business and first class tickets.
855-325-1820. 855-325-1820. That's 855-325-1820.
Hey, there's something you forgot to do. It sure is hot. Are you sweating like a dog? Wait, what? Dogs don't sweat. Oh no, you forgot to get your window tinted. Whether it's the kitchen window that sits in the sun for the hottest part of the day, or you just got new wheels, call Sharp Window Tinting in Burleson. 817-615-9379, or look them up on the web, sharpwindowtint.com.
Accelerated Graphics and Signs, 101 East Renfro, Sweet C in Burleson, Texas, can handle all of your graphic needs. Need a banner or promotional products for your business? They got you covered. T-shirts and caps for your group. All you need to figure out is if you want them screen printed or embroidered. How about some slick graphics on that hot ride to make you stand out from the crowd? Accelerated Graphics and Signs can handle anything you throw at them. Located at 101 East Renfro Street, Sweet C in Burleson, Texas, go in and see them. Call them at 817-991-0523 or reach them on the web at www.acceleratedgraphics.net. They are loud and proud and want to serve you. Accelerated Graphics.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
The voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio. Welcome to the Her Show, Home Experience Radio, with your host, Trina Titus Lozano. This is a live call-in show that takes your calls and questions about marriage, family, and personal relationships. She's a licensed and ordained pastoral counselor, author, international conference speaker, wife, mom, and grandmother. She's been counseling and teaching vital relationship skills for over 30 years. Trina is real and relational and reveals strong truths spoken in tough love and common sense. Join us on the studio line now at 817-637-2585. And now, here's Trina.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Her Show. I am Trina Titus Lozano, pastoral counselor, licensed and ordained Christian minister, and I'm here with you every Monday on Joco Community Radio to encourage you. And we talk about all kinds of wonderful topics to inspire you in whatever life challenges you are going through. And I have a guest in the studio today. Lori, welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, Lori, you are here. You work with Safe Families, and this is so important. And we are here to support families and to surround families in crisis with caring and compassion and community right here in the DFW area. So we're excited to talk about Safe Families. And also, I just want to welcome you because we're going to just support you and encourage you because you and your husband are in ministry. You pastor a church here in Arlington. So tell our listeners a little bit about your church.
Well, we are in Arlington Renewed Life Church, and absolutely, we've been in Arlington for about 20 years now, celebrating 20 years this month, and
I'm not sure if I can hear you or not. Can you hear yourself?
I do not.
Okay, hold on. Let me make sure that your mic is unmuted because hold on for the technical difficulties here, y'all. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's try that. Oh, I hear there we go.
Your mic wasn't unmuted.
So
okay,
much better,
let's start.
so
Let me
much
start this
better.
over. So, Lori, you are here in the studio with me, and you have an incredible calling on your life to minister to people that are in need of Jesus.
Yes, yes.
As a pastor's wife, and also working with Safe Families. So, tell us a little bit about your church first.
About our church.
Yeah.
My husband and I pastor Renewed Life Church in Arlington. He's been the senior pastor for 20 years.
I love that.
And we've been married for 9 years. So I came into the community 9 years ago.
Oh, so amazing. And how long have you been working with Safe Families?
I've been with Safe Families since 2020, actually August of 2020 during the pandemic.
Wow, that's
I know,
so
isn't that
wonderful.
amazing?
That is wonderful. So, y'all, Safe Families is an organization that surrounds families that are in crisis with caring, compassionate, and community right here in the DFW area. So, if you would like to be a support system, please go to Safe Families. And how can they get involved in this?
There's a lot of ways they can get involved. It's through church and church community.
Okay.
They can go to the website, Safe Families for Children.
Okay.
DFW, because we are the DFW chapter, because we are national,
Yes.
an organization as well as international. So they would choose the DFW chapter. We would have they could fill out a request for information online and also complete a volunteer application. And we'd love to have the conversation with, becoming a host family and becoming a circle of support for families in crisis. So that could be a host family, a family friend, a resource friend, a family coach. There's also administrative things that volunteers can do as well. The church becomes involved and becomes a ministry within the congregation and imparting into volunteers and encouraging them to serve their communities as well.
A real support system.
Yes.
And that's what it's all about. So the families in crisis are probably going through homelessness or maybe unemployment or hospitalization or domestic violence, incarceration, substance abuse, addiction, things like this. So of course, when parents are going through this, the kids, their little lives just are going to fall apart if they don't have help, and the parents' lives feel like they're falling apart and they need help. So we all need support, right?
Absolutely.
And so this is the whole thing. We cannot just think about our own lives and our own situations, but how can we help someone in need? And that's what we want to do.
Absolutely.
Well, I am so supportive of what you and your husband do. We met a few months ago this summer. I was speaking at a women's conference, and y'all were there. Both you and your husband were there, and it was just wonderful. You guys were leading worship. He was leading worship, and you guys were ministering, and so it was a neat thing to connect. And so when we started to connect, we realized we had mutual friends and also a mutual heart for ministry, because I have such a heart for helping people that are in crisis, and I like to keep my eyes open and be available, and we're both connectors. And that's ultimately what Safe Families does. Is if you are a person that's listening right now and you are in crisis, you want to go and fill out the form so that you can be the intake form.
Absolutely,
right? So explain about that.
So there's a request for intake. It's to volunteer. We will call you back and just talk about the areas in which you feel like your heart and you're being led to serve.
Okay.
Because there are those different areas, and because there's so many moving parts and pieces to Safe Families, that it's such a beautiful organization and ministry, because, one day, you're a family friend, and then you go, oh my gosh, I've got such a love and a heart. And then I want to become a host family, or you know what? Hey, I just want to be a resource friend, and I just want to, build furniture for the families when they get their apartments, or, I just want to provide gift cards to the family coaches so that we can remove barriers for the families in crisis. So there's a lot of opportunity, and especially this is the church getting involved and being involved and becoming the church and making a way for people like Jesus did, right? I
That's
mean,
right.
Jesus
Oh,
did
yeah.
this.
Oh, yes.
He did this for the 5,000.
right.
And we are a part of this ministry of making a way for people to Jesus, but we do it through relationship.
Exactly.
This is about radical
I
hospitality
love that.
and disruptive generosity and intentional compassion.
Yes.
It's the heart of Jesus
It is.
to lead people to him.
That's so. Repeat those things again. Radical hospitality. Love that.
Yes, I know it's one for disruptive generosity.
Disruptive generosity.
And so,
I mean, it might be an inconvenience to you. Be generous anyway. That's
Yes.
where, even though it's a little bit of an inconvenience, it's a little bit of a disruption. I do this all the time. And it is radical hospitality, where when I find someone in need, we invite them to our home, and our guest room is reserved for people that are in transition, and we don't charge them anything. We just help them we're just a bridge,
right,
until they get to the place where they need to go. Sometimes we've met before, sometimes we haven't. Sometimes it's just one or two people, sometimes it's a whole family. And that is radical generosity. It's so important. Of course, and I'll say, here's the keys to my car. And
who does that?
You know what? We should all be doing that.
Right.
If I have a car, I want to share it. If I have groceries, I want to share it. If you have a guest room in your house, don't leave it empty. People need shelter. I think that is just so important for people to know. Your guest room is so. We want to be able to fill it up with people in need, and it's not a long-term thing. It's just a support system. Based out of your heart to give. I love that. Radical hospitality.
Yes.
Radical hospitality. Yes. Yes. What do we have that we can share? What do we have? Because we can all share something. We all have something to give.
Absolutely. Even if it's a word.
That's right.
It's an encouragement.
Yeah.
Just to be nurturing to a mom who was never nurtured.
Yeah.
And is unable to nurture her children because she didn't receive that nurturing or that compassion. Even from a family. I love that you said that we are the bridge, because so many bridges, we've heard that saying, you've burnt a bridge.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You've burnt a bridge.
Yes.
So there's no bridge for them to cross over into their own families. So here we are as the body of Christ, rebuilding the bridge for them and rebuilding it towards Jesus.
That's right.
Without judgment, without shame, and without guilt, and making a way and say, here is your support. Here is this radical hospitality. Here is this disruptive generosity. And part of that disruptive generosity is we're going to disrupt the foster care system.
Ooh, I like that.
We're going to disrupt the foster care system. And these children do not have to go into foster care, but they can go into host homes while their families are taking care of business, so to speak, right?
And being helped. That's right. That's right.
Because if I'm a single mom and I have one child to 4 children,
okay,
and I am trying to do my life, I've got a job interview. I can't go to that job interview with 4 children and nobody to watch my children.
Yeah.
So is there a host family or even a family friend? And all of our volunteers are vetted and trained volunteers. So there's that safety piece, because this is a voluntary program.
Yeah.
Because you guys would be surprised. Moms don't want to give up their children.
No. And you guys help dads too.
Absolutely.
A single mom or a single dad, because they're in the same type of situation.
We have a dad in the organization now who's being helped, a single dad.
Yeah, and like you say, you're a single mom, a single dad. Heaven forbid that you get hospitalized or that you need a surgery. Because then what do you do with your kids? So this is where Safe Family Host Homes come in. Otherwise, your kids would end up in foster care,
right? Just
because you have an emergency.
And or in unsafe situations and environments that put them in vulnerable predicaments.
Yes, which is sometimes why they're in the situation.
Correct.
In the first place. So Safe Families is it's a national and international organization. So this is a support system, and this is what we want to do. We want to be part of the support system. So I wanted to just kind of dive into how to what you're all about, your identity. What has God called you to do and be, Lori, as you're navigating his purpose in your life? And part of it is helping these people. Part of it is a support system to your husband, as the two of you together are pastoring this church and a full-time, more than full-time ministry that you are just devoted to the church, to save families. So tell us about how that is an overflow from your identity.
Wow. So I didn't grow up in a Christian home. It wasn't until I was 35 when Jesus just wrecked my life, and I fell in love with Jesus in the inner city of West Palm Beach, where I was raised in South Florida, in the same area that I went to high school. But the Lord brought me back full circle, and it's just an amazing relationship. I didn't know anything about identity until I started walking with the Lord, and he started speaking to me about my purpose and my calling and who I am in him. And as that began to unravel through inner healing, through, reading the word, being in groups, being around other believers to pull out who I am and my calling, and to speak truth and identity and purpose into me. But of course, that becomes right through the Lord, right?
Sure.
So, not knowing all of this and just trusting and going out in that blind faith, all of these doors just started opening.
Wow.
And I just started walking into, okay, so here I was in South Florida, I'm in the inner city, and now I'm in Texas. 2 years later, the Lord says, go. And so I go, and then I'm working at a homeless shelter, in Fort Worth, and, halfway across the world. And so I'm doing this, and then I end up working in the jails and doing pre and post release case management and starting a women's home. And now, married to a pastor. And I'm like, who would have ever thought this, right?
This was God's plan for your life all along.
Right.
How amazing. How amazing. So the social work just sort of, it just unfolded.
I was a paralegal.
You were a paralegal. And here, God had this call on your life to meet the needs of hurting people in crisis.
Yes.
And for social work.
Yes.
But spiritual work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who would have I would have never have thought it.
Wow.
That was not, when you go, think about this in second grade or whatever, first grade, you go in for show and tell, and, or what do you want to be when you grow up? And like, well, a pastor's wife? That was never on the radar.
Well, you didn't even know what that meant.
Had no idea.
No
idea, but it was covered up until it got, but it was covered up with a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know the Lord like I know him now.
Isn't that amazing that he really revealed himself to you and revealed your whole purpose in life? This is so incredible. I'm so happy to be here with you today, and just your work in the church, your work with your husband, Greg. You guys are so, I think when I first met you, I just felt so inspired that your unity was so apparent. I mean, the two of you work together in ministry, and your marriage is a beautiful thing to witness. I mean, I was just sitting at the same dinner table with you and seeing you guys interact and just seeing you do ministry together. Your passion for the Lord is just so inspiring. And so we're going to have Greg on the line, because I just want to get him in on the conversation, because I think your story is something that will be very inspirational to our listeners. Hey, Greg, are you there?
I'm here.
Hey, well, welcome to the Her Show. I'm here with your lovely wife, Lori. And so she got us all to this point of telling us about her identity and her purpose, and then how the Lord brings you guys together miraculously. And we don't need to go into all that, but he miraculously brought you together. I mean, clearly a match made in heaven, the two of you. It's just obvious, right? It just really is. You guys are so in love, and it's so obvious. So I didn't know at first, just seeing you guys, how long you had been married, didn't know your story. I just knew that here's a pastor and his wife, and we were at this conference together. And then you guys were just so transparent to share your story. And as I'm getting to know you better, I learned that this is her first marriage. And how old were you when you got married?
44.
44. Oh my goodness. That must have been amazing.
It was.
To meet your husband at that season of your life. And I know a lot of 43-year-olds that would be inspired and encouraged to know that God's got someone for them that don't give up. And then she meets you, and y'all are the same age, but it's your second marriage. So I picked up on that in our conversation. That I also picked up on the fact that you had planted a church a long time ago. So then I'm thinking here, okay, wait. He planted a church a long time ago. He just got married. How did all this work out? So tell us a little bit of your story and what God did in your life to bring you to this point of partnering in ministry with Lori.
Oh, what a fun journey it's been. Let's see. Well, I'll just go back to some of the beginning with starting the church. That happened in 2001, 2002. So about literally 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was living the great life over with all the cool kids in Dallas and did not want to come home to Arlington, where I grew up. But the Lord opened up some doors for me. And it was with a friend of mine who was opening up a rock and roll club. And I'd always wanted to do a church in that setting. And so he opened that door, and I was still single at the time. I was in my early 30s. Was okay with being single, not really looking to change that. And I started dating somebody during this time. We eventually got married, and helped me with this church plant I think we got married after the first year and a half of the plant. And so we transitioned from there, was very active, very involved. It was really a really nice fit with her skill sets and mine, and just the crazy group of people that God brought to us to minister to. But over time, there were tensions that happen in every church. And me having never been a senior pastor before, I was a youth pastor for years. Didn't have some of the experience that I needed, not only to navigate the church, but I didn't grow up in a Christian home. Okay. And so even though my father would make me go to the church and make my mother basically take me, he never went. And there was, I won't go too deep into it, but there was a lot that was going on in our home that was not godly, that was not good at all. And so I had no foundation for what this needed to look like. And so as crisis and things came into the church, at first everybody came in to love her, and she was their best friend. She just thought she was great. And then a spirit came in of division.
Yes.
And that wreaked havoc. And it was amazing how I watched one person struggling with literal demons that when that person finally left, I thought, well, okay, everybody else will be fine and this will be good. And that's not what happened. It just started an exodus after that.
Wow.
But it didn't just start an exodus with leaving the church. There was some very hurtful, mean, backstabbing things that happened to her during that time.
Wow.
And it was ugly. And I was honestly surprised. It caught me off guard.
With other women. So some cat fights, some women attacking her, huh? Attacking the pastor's wife.
They were attacking, and there really was no ground for it. I know that they were hurt, but she had not done anything that I could see that deserved any of this, and just turned in a very ugly way. And I know it hurt her deeply.
Sure. Because,
I mean, how could it not? But these were people who basically swore to her, I'm going to be your best friend. I'm here through everything.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and that's the whole thing with a church congregation. You really become like a church family, and you want it to be a safe family, right? Like we're talking about, like the church is supposed to be a safe place, and you invest your lives with these people, and you are trusting them, and you're working and really sacrificially giving so much time to the church. And then when people will turn on you and attack you, it is very painful. My dad is a pastor, so I grew up with a pastor's family in a pastor's home, and I watched this happen to my parents, how people would attack my mom and sometimes would attack my dad, quite often attack my mom. I mean, just attacks would come often. And it was so hard to even process as a child watching this, because it's like, what is happening? Like, we're here serving you, loving you. Why are you turning on us? And so I know your wife must have just felt very, very betrayed by these people that she was serving. So that began to cause some conflict in your marriage, right?
It did. And, so there was the normal things. She had had children. And so I had not been around children that much. I'm a single guy. I'm a youth pastor. I love kids, but that's not my skill set.
Parenting.
And so I'm working on how to be this person, working through it, because it's exposing my own frailties,
Sure.
my thing in me that needed to get healing.
Maybe you weren't as patient as you need to be.
Well,
kids are messy and noisy, and sometimes that's really tough to deal with, especially if you're a step parent. That's not easy. So yeah, your buttons might have been getting pushed every once in a while. That's cute, and it wasn't your skill set. I like how you say that's the part that I thought was cute. It might not have been my skill set. Yeah.
Well, I was used to having my quiet time. Kids don't understand that.
No. They're noisy and messy. That's right. So there was some conflict.
The interaction, as a child, I grew up pretty much almost as an only child. I have siblings, but they're like 5, and then my other one is 10 years younger than me. So that was just a strange thing. So I'm making these adjustments, and not only was there pressure from, like I said, the hurt relationships, and I literally watched her. I just seen a switch that just turned off. And I felt completely helpless. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to walk her. Today, I think I would have a better shot at that, having gone through everything I've gone through.
Sure.
At that time, I didn't know how to be the husband she needed me to be.
Okay.
I didn't know how to be the stepdad to help these kids even process this. Plus, there were financial struggles. I mean, this is a church. We've gone through an up, but now we're hitting a low. And, giving goes away. I'm having to work another job, and that's another 40 hours gone. And then we started a business on top of all this. And so it was a crazy roller coaster that just pulled us away from each other. And as that happened, I could tell probably the last 2 years of our marriage that it was over. But I'm like, I'm doing everything I can.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to fix it. And I'm praying, but I'm doing the man thing. I'm like, man, if I just bring home the money, because that seems to be what she really wants. And if I'm just quiet and peaceful, I became a person I didn't even recognize. I'd never been passive aggressive. And I became this person that I didn't even recognize until after the divorce.
Wow. Interesting.
So I got through it, and I went to go visit my grandmother who had dementia, and she didn't really recognize, but I hopped on my motorcycle. She was all great with it, which made me happy. Okay. So I drove to Michigan from Texas, came back, and when I opened the door, nobody was there.
Wow. The shock of your life. Your wife and the kids are just gone one day. One day they're there, the next day they're gone with no warning.
No warning. I walk in, and it was bizarre because
took the kids and left.
I texted her where she was, and she let me know that she had left. There were no phone calls. It was just all through text. But the house still it looked like a wreck, because it was almost like they just went through, took what they wanted, and then just left everything.
Wow.
And so that was a hard pill to swallow. Now, I knew in my denomination, I'm processing this and I'm thinking, what do I do? How do I get her back? But I have to say something to somebody. I had 48 hours. And I just took that first 24 hours just to grieve, just to try to just figure out what in the world just happened.
So
that's
there
where I
was
was
there
at.
was a 40, and I want to stick with me after the break, Greg, if you can, because I do want to talk about this because you're in such a dilemma as a pastor. Your wife just left you, and pastors are not supposed to get a divorce. Number one, pastors are not, they're supposed to be such a great husband that their wife would never leave them. And here you are, you get home to an empty house, and your overseers and the denomination heads and the supervisors and district supervisors, all the things, there's already a policy in place that you have 48 hours to tell them that your wife has left you. So I want us to talk more about this because I think that I might have some pastors that are listening and might find themselves in a similar situation. So stick with me. I'll be right back after the break. Y'all, this is a great topic. Please join us. Call in.
Why have thousands of aspiring authors teamed up with Christian Faith Publishing to publish their book? Because Christian Faith Publishing is an author-friendly publisher who understands that your labor is more than just a book. We provide authors freedom and flexibility throughout the publishing process, professional book editing, award-winning design, and some of the highest royalty structures in the publishing industry. And as always, you will retain 100% of the rights to your book.
I was looking to find a company that I could trust, one that assisted in the editing process completely.
The most important qualities that I was looking for was a publisher who was honest and upfront, no hidden costs or fees, and owning the rights to my own work.
Christian Faith Publishing will publish, market, and sell your books in all major bookstores, online booksellers, as well as specialty Christian bookstores. Call for your free author submission kit.
800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. That's 800-978-4812.
Out of dead carpet giving you the blues? Tired of your old dingy and broken tile? Let my friends at the Floor Store in Cleveland, Texas give your home the makeover it deserves. This is Old Taco Joe coming to you for the Floor Store. Whether it's carpet, tile, wood flooring, or real wood laminate, the Floor Store can cover all of your flooring needs. Located at 405 West Henderson Street in Cleveland, Texas, owner Brent Harris can help. Shower tile, tub surrounds, even backsplashes. Give them a call today at 817-641-9444. The Floor Store, they got you covered. When you're hungry for tender brisket or some delicious homemade cobbler, then look no further than Leach Brothers Barbecue, located at 1106 East Henderson in Cleveland, Texas. Leach Brothers has been family-owned and operated since 1950. Take it from me, Taco Joe Orwinski. Todd and his family have been filling my belly breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a long time. Heck, I even have my own booth, open Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Come see them for dine-in, carry-out, and all your catering needs.
You're listening to Joco Community Radio.
Welcome back to the Her Show. Joco Community Radio is proud to be the voice of Johnson County, Texas. And we are live 365 on the TuneIn Radio Network. So to listen or watch, simply go to tuneinjoco.com to choose where and how. The Joco Community Radio app is now available for free on Android and Apple devices. So simply search your store and check out our lineup and more on jococommunityradio.com. This episode and more brought to you by Patriot Claims, making your insurance work for you. So just reach out to your Texas sales rep, Nona Reed, 844 Text Hail 844-839-4245. And if you would like to join us on the studio line, you are welcome to call in 817-837-2585. And we're happy to take your call. This is a great conversation that we are having. I'm here with Lori Key in the studio. Hi, Lori.
Hey, Trina.
And her husband, Greg, is on the phone. Hey, Greg.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. So this is such a great story because when I met you and Lori, you've been married already 9 years, and your commitment and your passion in ministry together is so fascinating. And I was shocked to hear that you had been divorced and that this was your second marriage, and somehow, some way, you survived it all. and never walked away from ministry. So I want you to tell our listeners more details about that. And I hope that some pastors that are listening who might be walking through something similar, like their wife leaving them, will be encouraged. So that's what I hope. So tell us more about your story, Greg.
All right. Well, I'm within that first 24 hours, and I'm just processing everything, trying to, as I'm going through that, I'm seeing the writing on the wall. I see the signs that I didn't see before, just wanted to ignore. And so I just took 24 hours to grieve. And then I think the next 24 hours was getting up the courage to even have that phone call. Because really, I had planted this church. I was home. I was in front of all my family, my friends who were there. There was some pride. And really, I just was expecting them to say, "You're out." And that's what I really thought was going to happen. I called my district leader and let him know. And honestly, he was amazing. He was very compassionate.
Wow.
He was very caring. He walked me through what this process needs to know. He did ask if I had, he needed to ask to do due diligence. Was this because of an affair I had? Had I done something illegal? Just the questions he needed to ask. And when he found out that that was not the case, he said, "Well, Greg, I can let you stay at your church. But the thing is you can never talk about this from the pulpit. You can't talk about this with the church people." And at that time, I got it, because who wants to go to a church when your pastor's just up there going through his grief and just that's all he talks about? That's not really uplifting and, whoa, hey, wasn't that a great service? We're getting so much. And I told him I could, not realizing how hard that was going to be.
Wow.
And so I started this process. I also, there was no conversation necessarily of divorce. She just left.
Right.
And so I'm having to wrestle with, over this next year, that I may just be single, because scripturally I couldn't find anywhere in there, if she just left, where I could move on. And so I'm also adjusting mentally. What does this look like? Is there a loophole? I hate saying that, but I'm like,
love it. We need it. We need it, Greg.
Jesus loophole.
Yeah. We need it. Like, people need to hear this, because people get hopeless in situations like this. So you are giving people hope, Greg, really, seriously. So you just needed in that moment to figure out what was next and how you were going to navigate this while you're pastoring.
Right. And so I'm still working, which at that time, especially being a man, it was great that I was working. It was a very physical job, so I could get out there. And all I had at that time, she still had our other vehicle, was my motorcycle. So there's no radio. I'm just driving at night, just praying and just alone with the Lord, just trying to figure this out. What does this look like now? And trying to even communicate. I was assigned 2 incredible men of God that their job was to walk with me through this process. But
that's awesome.
I think where it wasn't helpful was these guys, and this is awesome for them, they have great longevity in their marriages. They are incredible with their wives and their families. But they had never really lived lives outside of the church.
Okay.
So they couldn't necessarily, first of all, relate to me, I felt. And then 2, some of the things they were asking me to do, to go after her and pursue her that looked great in movies. I'm like, I can't do that. I'm not going to go get arrested. I'm not going to go have her.
In theory, that's good. But if you knew the woman who was to become your ex-wife, you knew her personality type, and you knew if she made up her mind that she was leaving, if you came after her, there would be a court order on you. like you could not do that because you knew her. So even though their advice was well intentioned, it wasn't going to work in your situation. Like you knew it wouldn't. Wow. How did you handle that? Not doing what they were advising you to do, because sometimes that creates a lot of problem.
It did create some tension, but I'm not a quiet person necessarily. So I just kind of let them know that right up front. I'm like, that's crazy. You're endangering me. And having worked with so many families and marriages that had struggled too, I saw that usually, and I tell this to men, by the time she leaves, she's already checked out.
Totally.
Women don't just one day wake up and go, I'm gone.
Right.
They have
They've been
planned
thinking
it
about
out.
it.
There's
Yeah.
everything going on.
Yeah. They've been thinking about it for a while.
Well, and that's why I can even say before I left on my trip, I found a brochure for an apartment. Now I had kids that were about to graduate, and I just was like, well, that's kind of weird. And I had a sneaking suspicion, but then I dismissed it. I'm like, no. We're not at that point.
Wow.
So we were.
Yeah. So she left, and I know some of the details. So she left you, and she never wanted to come back, and you couldn't go after her. And she had her reasons. We won't go into all of that, but you wanted to save your marriage, and she was the leaver. However, she didn't follow through to actually file. So then here you end up having to file, even though she was the leaver. And that can become a complex sometimes with church organizations and denominations. It's almost like, oh, well, if you file, then, you're going to be punished for filing, but yet you weren't the leaver, but she wouldn't do the follow through. So, right. Did you find yourself in that position of being afraid to file, even though she wasn't coming back?
I again, theologically, I was like, I made a vow. Right. And if I didn't know she was breaking that vow, then I have to just figure out my new normal. What does life look like being married, being a pastor, having to answer these questions, and she may never come back. And being the woman she was, she could have probably lived that way for a while. And so I'm wrestling with what does this look like? And not till a year later, because nobody would really tell me things. Nobody would really talk. It was almost like this veil of secrecy of trying to protect me, which in the long run, I'm like, you weren't protecting me. You were actually holding me back. But I was glad for that first year before I filed, because I don't think anybody going through this, a cousin of mine gave me some great advice. She'd gone through a divorce.
See,
She's
she
like,
knew.
Greg, don't do anything. Don't make a decision for at least a year. Don't date. Don't, you're going to be lonely. You're going to go through this stuff.
Yeah.
But that's the worst thing you can do.
Yes.
And that was the best advice, because I walked through the gamut of grief. I got to another place. I got to where I was no longer blaming. And the Holy Spirit could actually start looking at me and say, hey, Greg, let's have a look at some of these areas in your life.
Yes.
You can blame her for, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you've done that for a while, but you've got a lot to work on.
Yes. That's so perfect, Greg, because that is when it was the beginning. And we'll spend this last 15 minutes talking about now that is the beginning of where God took you into a place of real humility and personal growth and healing, and took you from being a victim to victorious, because here you were a victim of your wife walking out on you and leaving you permanently, and then you have to walk through so you don't stay in that place of pain. You got healing, and you found a way to do it, and ultimately you became victorious in your own life, and then you started dating, and then you met Lori. And so I think it's so phenomenal, because where you guys came together is such a story of God bringing two together. Here Lori had never been married, had no children, and was so in love with Jesus. Talk about a perfect helpmate in your church, right? And to build the kingdom right there in Arlington. So I just can't even imagine the thrill of you finding this woman of God that falls in love with you.
it was great because that was my prayer. One, I wanted to become a better version of me. I needed to learn. My cry out to God was, this pain has to mean something. God, if it doesn't mean anything, then I don't want to go through it.
Yeah.
And my second prayer was, I had all this checklist of what I wanted that I threw out the window before I got married the first time. I need somebody who loves you way more than they're ever going to love me.
Yes.
Now I say I need somebody who loves you way more than they'll ever love me, but love me a little, because she is just so in love with Jesus.
Lori, I want you to have a chance to talk here right now. So you meet this man that's a pastor. I mean, and here you are. You guys are dating, which means if you are considering marrying him, you're going to be a pastor's wife. And here you hadn't even been a believer that long.
Correct.
And never been married before. So you step into this role. If you marry him, you're stepping into a role of being a pastor's wife, which is a whole nother thing that would be different than anyone else. So I'm just amazed that you just went for it.
It was nothing but the grace of God.
Yeah.
And his calling and his leading and my faith walk with him. It's that mustard seed of faith. When I gave my life to Christ, I said, I will follow you.
Mm-hmm.
I will go where you lead me. And of course, all of that is just walking through doors and not knowing where I was going and what I was doing, but with him and his grace, right? So here I am walking through all of these doors.
Yeah.
And from what, it's like that. It's what scripture says, from glory to glory to glory.
Mm-hmm.
And this door opens to marry this man, to meet this man, right? Well, we're going to meet, we get married,
yeah.
And to be a pastor's wife. And what does that mean? I've had to walk this out with the Lord every single day.
Oh, yeah.
But it was about identity, really for me, about identity and calling and God's grace in and through it all.
Yes.
And that's why we continue to pursue, even in the depths of darkness and the things that we walk through and that we're in, and, just through all of our own transparencies and vulnerabilities and what Holy Spirit is, revealing to us. But because of our walk with our Lord, because of our experiences, we are able to come together in prayer and say, you know what? Today's not a good day, but we're still going to continue to fight, and we're going to keep our eyes on Jesus.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, that's what we have to do.
That's right. And so you are together, working together to really build the community there. And so, Greg, you have found a helper with this wife. I'm telling you, she's something.
She is something, man. She just knocks it out of the park, and man, I look at her faith and I'm like, I'm the pastor. Now she is an ordained elder herself. Now she's a pastor.
Yay, Lori! Woohoo! Yay for women.
Yes,
women
come
preachers.
on, all right.
Yay for women. Yay for women preachers who preach the gospel unapologetically with a voice that can be heard to the world, but are also submitted to your husband.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a yes in both. It doesn't have to be an either or.
Absolutely.
So you are so beautifully submitted and in love with your husband, but you have such a great calling on your life to minister to people and then to preach the gospel as well. That's wonderful. That's a wonderful inspiration.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I'm so glad that you did not quit, Greg. I don't even know how many times you considered quitting, but I'd like to hear about that. I'm sure you considered it, but you didn't quit. You kept preaching through it all. And eventually your congregation knew what was going on. They knew eventually. So tell me how that all worked.
Oh my goodness. Well, first job I did was I made a rule to myself. I'm not dating anybody in the church. So that was the
good
most
idea. That would have been a really bad idea.
Wisdom 101.
Wisdom 101. It's not rocket science. That's kind of like, duh. Like you think that would be a really bad idea. So I'm glad you figured that out, Greg. Good job. That would have been risky.
Then it was like, well, where do I go meet somebody?
Right, because you're at the church or at your job. I know. Oh my
And that
goodness.
was so tough. And I did something I was never going to do. I went on a dating site. And that was an adventure in itself that, when you put the word pastor out there, you would think that would bring probably a different group of people. And I would say for half of them, very different.
It was different.
But when I met Lori, this is how much game I had. we were started to talk, and I had so much game that she left and went to Africa for over a month, so on a mission trip.
That's so cool. Here you are meeting a pastor, but you're the one headed off to a mission trip.
Yes.
Love it. Love it.
And that's been the thing. I think that attracted me to her at the beginning too, because it just showed her how sold out she was for the Lord.
Yeah.
The woman she was going to be, and bringing this to the congregation had its own challenges. Of course, you can imagine at that time, I'm now available. So we did have a few single women who would start attending the church. And I just had to walk that out. But when she came in, of course, everybody's watching, and it was not comfortable. I had some issues with some of the leadership even that just were showing an ugly side. Now, I wasn't taking into consideration the youth of my wife's walk with the Lord.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I was also not fully taking into consideration how I needed to protect her.
Wow.
I saw this amazing warrior princess of God, which is what I call her.
Yeah.
And I just assumed she could just take on hell with a water pistol, and no matter what they did. And what she really was doing was crying out to me going, I need your help.
Yeah.
And
Boy, that would be
so
a tough situation to
inadvertently,
navigate. I cannot
didn't
even
believe-
imagine, because church people are so judgmental. So judgmental. Like they don't even know the story. And here they are so judgmental. That would be so difficult. They're judgmental anyway and legalistic anyway. And even though that their lives don't look much different than what you were going through.
Absolutely.
Like how many of them were already divorced and remarried? You know, I'm like, come on. And here you are going through this, but you still keep preaching and you don't quit. So that's good that the Lord showed you need to kind of help her with this. This is not easy. This is like Daniel in the lion's den, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But you didn't get eaten.
I did not.
God shut the mouths of the lions, and he protected you, and he protected your relationship. So ultimately you guys got married. But Greg, how many times did you want to quit during this process? Do you ever feel like you were unqualified, or that you shouldn't be here, or maybe you didn't feel that way? But I know other pastors whose wives have left them really feel unqualified for ministry.
Well, I've always felt unqualified, and God had just shown me that this is what He wanted me to do.
Wow.
That's a whole other story.
Greg,
but
you know what?
Yeah.
Stop. I got to stop you right there. That is so beautiful, because if you hadn't, like, that's what qualifies you right there, is that you felt unqualified and that you were so humble in just saying yes to the call. That is so beautiful. So that right there is powerful. So if men are struggling with that, if pastors are struggling with that, maybe their motive wasn't so right or so pure in the first place. Maybe they did feel like in their own efforts, they were good enough, or they had it all together. But, Greg, that's good. That's good. That's good. So you had always felt unqualified. Okay. So
Now my father laid into me one thing, because I said that, for the majority of my life, he wasn't a believer. Later in my life, thank God for my mom, he did become a Christian, and they had a relationship that I never thought I would ever see. But he put in something into me called tenacity.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
He let me know at an early age, because we'd seen church stuff. And even though it affected him where he wouldn't go, he looked at me and he goes, "Don't ever let anybody run you out of your church."
I love that.
And so I took that into the pastorate.
Wow.
I'm like, they're not just running me out. Now, if God shows me, or if I really see I'm making a mistake, I'm always open to that. I don't go in blind thinking I've got all the answers. But just because it's hard, well, that's kind of what we do. Just because people don't like you, well, I've read the Bible. A lot of followers of Christ aren't liked, actually.
Actually,
so that just goes along with it.
Yeah.
So
I love your attitude, and I love your heart for ministry and for people. I love that this is not about if they like you or approve of you. You're preaching the gospel. You are ministering to the needs of your community. I think that's the phenomenal thing about your church, Renewed Life Church in Arlington, is you care about people in need, and you minister to the people of your community. This is so important and so powerful. So God's going to build his church.
Absolutely.
And you don't quit. And when you're called to do it, you don't quit. You've got grit. You've got grit, and you don't give up.
Mhm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you guys are doing it together.
It's been amazing. Yeah.
It's been amazing. So tell me about your ministry and what the call that Renewed Life Church has together with Safe Families. How are the two of you bringing all this together? Because you guys have been married for 9 years, no children. Neither of you brought children into the marriage. Greg's second marriage, Lori's first marriage. They come together really as a couple, so on fire for God, been through the fire.
Yes.
Been through the fire and come out on the other side with this inner healing and this passion for people who are in crisis. You know, crisis. You've been there. You've walked through it both in and out of the church. So this heart for people, this heart of compassion, the two of you have no judgment towards people. You just love them. And I love that about your church and your ministry. So share with us how Safe Families and Renewed Life Church all works together and how this is bringing people the love of Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Greg, I would love for you to share on this as the senior pastor of Renewed Life. I mean, you know my heart for this, but the importance of the church becoming involved with a ministry that speaks to the needs of those in crisis and how we as a church body are to do this together.
Yeah.
Okay, I think you're the qualified one, but I'll jump in.
Well, it's together. You guys do it
we
together.
are together.
You
in
can
this.
team talk.
But you know,
It's okay.
There we
but you
go.
know, as
We'll
a
team
wife, but
talk.
as his wife and as the associate pastor, I had to go to my senior pastor.
Yes.
To talk to him about Safe Families.
Yeah.
And to bring Safe Families into, our congregation. And this doesn't happen a lot. It's not something that, even coming out of a pandemic, that churches are open to do because we're opening our homes to messy. The church is messy enough. Pastors are walking out this pandemic. They don't know what to do. They're struggling. And then to ask a church to bring Safe Families into their congregation and because we need volunteers.
Sure.
And these are volunteers from a church.
Yes.
So Greg, as senior pastor, bringing this to him, why do you want Safe Families in our church?
This is a no-brainer to me. It fits theologically, it fits biblically. It's my philosophy of ministry, basically. Safe Families is this wrap-around continuum of care. To me, that when I look in Acts, when I look at the church as it should be, stripped of all the pretense, that's the church. We're ministering to those who are struggling. We're ministering to families and children and widows. And to the key to this is there's a chance for everybody in the church to get involved. This is a beautiful, actually, discipleship program where you're doing the praxis. You're getting in, you're getting outside of your comfort zone, and you are doing the real ministry God's called us to do, and that's to love others. And so through every aspect of it, and the more I looked at Safe Families, honestly, it just fit perfectly. I may sound biased, which I'm a little biased, but before even Lori was heavily involved, I'm like, why would any church, regardless of your status, your economics, how big or small you are, why would you not do this? It would be beyond me to say, hey, there is no no to it. It's all yes, because it just helps us take every member of our church and say, hey, we're not forcing you to do something. We're finding where your passion, where your calling, where your gifting is, and we're plugging you into a family that needs you to walk with them. And it could be a short term, it could be a long term, but I just didn't see any reason that we shouldn't.
Because that's pure religion. That's what the Bible
Absolutely.
says. Pure and undefiled religion is being there for the widows and orphans. It's taking care of them. It's opening your home. It's bringing them food or buying them gas or whatever the need is. Thank you, Greg, for being with us on the Her Show today. I am here every Monday to encourage people, and you've been an encouragement today, especially an encouragement to pastors who find themselves in a situation that would make them feel like quitting. But you're an inspiration. Thank you, Lori, for being here. Thank you, Greg. God bless you
Trina.
and bless Renewed Life Church. I so appreciate your ministry there. Y'all, this is something that I want you to take to heart. God has a plan. He has a purpose for you. And as you keep walking and trusting him in the process, yeah, sometimes people leave you. Sometimes marriages can't be saved. But God has a plan, and he will make something good out of any situation if we keep trusting him, because we are called according to his purpose. So thank you for joining me on the Her Show today. God has a plan. Jesus loves you. I'll see you next time. Hugs and high fives.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godly, this is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center
Ooh,
for you,
well,
a
thank
family
you for
member,
having
or
us
a loved
on.
one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supply, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details.